What up, fam? How y'all doing? Let me pin this title. What up, Miss Libby? Hold on, I'm pinning this title. How are you doing? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so again, I hope you all are doing well. I hope your day has been pleasant. If not, there's always time to shift your energy, and I say that in the context, knowing that people are suffering from different forms of abuse. So I say that while knowing that sometimes it's not always easy to shift our energy because many of us live with our oppressor and many of us have been quarantining with our oppressor due to COVID. So I say that in a consciousness. If you are someone that is, please DM me and I can get you resources to help you aid your way of escape, to help you travel to a safe refuge. And I mean that. That's the point of this ministry, is to help people recover, to help people get delivered and resurrect from where they are. But you have to be willing, right? You have to be willing to, I don't even know why I'm saying this. You have to be willing to do the work of saying, yes, I want better, because you are worthy of better. You deserve better. You were not designed to take on or endure any form of mental, emotional, physical, sexual, spiritual, or financial abuse. That is not what the divine has made you for. The divine did not make you someone that is to endure selflessness and operate in self-denial. You are someone that spirit made worthy. Hi, New Church Ministry. You are someone that spirit made worthy. So as Black women, it is not our divine purpose to operate in selflessness and self-denial, or to operate in immense servitude, or to continuously live in oppression, right? So when I say that you can always shift your energy, I say that in the consciousness that sometimes we live in toxic spaces. And I just want you to know, if this is you, DM me and I can get you resources to help you aid your way of escape, right? I'm not a traditional or religious pastor, but I did grow up in the church, and God has made several ways of escape. One, and I escaped domestic violence myself, so I know that it is possible, but you have to be willing to aid your escape, meaning you have to be willing to say, yes, I want better for myself. But the reason that I got here, the reason I came on here is to talk about the historical analysis of what's so wrong with being a strong Black woman, right? And I'm going to tap into my own story a little bit. I'm going to talk about something that I spoke about in therapy yesterday. Because Strong Black Women in Wellness, where I help strong Black women cultivate wellness in their life by embracing vulnerability, creating balance, and prioritizing selfhood, right? And welcoming vulnerability is tied to worthiness. And the reason that I know this is so is because when I think about, and I talked about this yesterday in therapy with my therapist, and I also earlier yesterday before I went to therapy, I was reading the Bible, and I've been in Genesis 1 and 2, the stories of creation, for like the past couple of weeks. And I was like, Spirit, show me. I'm going to actually tell y'all what I got. I was like, Spirit, show me what the vulnerability is in this piece, and how does it relate to being a strong Black woman. And the reason I did that, because in spaces of creation, all things are evident. So vulnerability is evident, worthiness is evident in spaces of authentic and sincere creation. A lot of things are evident, right? So let me read this real quick. Hold on. So this is what I said in regards to Genesis 1, right? So being a strong Black woman, right, operating in that persona, operating in immense of emotional suppression, independence, and caregiving, right? The persona of a strong Black woman hinders us from embracing the fullness of vulnerability, which generates creation, right? The persona of the strong black woman hinders us from embracing the fullness of vulnerability, and vulnerability generates creation. How did I see that in the biblical text? Well, in Genesis 1, when Spirit created the heavens and the earth, right? Spirit was vulnerable with spirit self and soft spirit self as a divine being that could manifest anything, right? Spirit knew who spirit was. And that's not always arrogance. When you know who you are and you know your capabilities, that's not always arrogance. That is a form of self-awareness. And self-awareness requires us to be vulnerable with ourselves. And we think that being vulnerable means that we have to spill our emotional guts all the time. No, that's not what vulnerability is about. Vulnerability is more so of the acknowledgement that starts with yourself that you share with other people, right? And sometimes we share our vulnerability in spaces where we can receive support, where we can receive tools and resources, right? But all the time, vulnerability starts with self-awareness. What is happening with me? What is happening in my mind? What is happening in my body? What is happening in my spirit? Why do I respond this way? And sometimes vulnerability can be scary because we don't know what exactly we're going to get. We don't know what exactly is going to happen or what's going to come up, right? This is why when you practice vulnerability, you need to be in a safe, supporting space, okay? So vulnerability always starts with you. It doesn't start with you telling your story. It starts with you telling your story to yourself and operating in self-awareness. So when Spirit created the heavens and the earth, Spirit knew who Spirit was. Spirit manifested, right, in darkness. And that's we could talk about it a little bit, how darkness is perceived always to be a negative thing. But Spirit, who I believe is a black woman, gave birth, manifested in darkness, in blackness, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing. So people think that, oh, I'm in this unhealthy state of being that many people parallel with darkness. And people think I can't create, I can't manifest. Yes, you can, right? We're manifesting when we don't even know that we are, because we are divine beings that is connected to all elements that are divine. You're connected to nature, you're connected to earth, you're connected to astrology, you're connected to the cosmos, right? We're connected when the new moon hit late June, right? When the new moon came, I was in the bathtub, right? And I intentionally took a bath to set my intentions to parallel with the energy of the new moon. And when I got in the tub, I felt that energy because I'm divine and I'm connected. Right? So we're manifesting at all times, even when we don't know that we are, especially in our subconscious. And this is why I am statements are very important, because it helps us to retrain our subconscious to support us rather than think against us, right? Our thoughts, our actions, our words, they're all portions of manifesting, right? And manifesting requires us to be vulnerable. And sometimes we can be vulnerable with ourselves and not know it, right? We could be vulnerable with ourselves and not know it. Oh no, I may have to take that back, because I thought I had a full thought there, but I don't have a full thought there. But I know that we're manifesting all the time when we don't know it. But vulnerability is a conscious act that starts with yourself, right? And the reason why vulnerability creates space is because why vulnerability generates creation is because once we understand what is going on with us, it requires us to do something, right? It requires us to do something. But we may not always act on what that requirement is. Meaning we may not take full responsibility for what our vulnerability needs to heal the wounds that we have, right? If that makes sense. So vulnerability generates creation because it requires us to do something. And that doing something is a form of creation, right? But when our vulnerability is soaked in when our vulnerability is soaked in everything that is so wrong with us, we only multiply that energy. But when our vulnerability reaches a point when we say, okay, this is what's happening to me, what is the alternative so that I can manifest wellness, right? What is the alternative? What is opposite of what is going on with me, right? And the opposite of that may be getting a spiritual coach. It may be doing some journaling. It may be taking a walk. It may be exercising, yoga. It may be getting a therapist, right? It may be getting into safe communities. It may be writing your story down, right? But the response to that, The response to what vulnerability requires is the actual creation, right? And as strong Black women, we want to create space and balance, right? We want to create ways of self-trust and self-reliance so that we can get back in tune with who we truly are, which lives outside of selflessness and self-denial and immense servitude. We were not designed to operate in immense servitude, to operate in selflessness and self-denial. That is not what Spirit has for us. We are divine beings. We are created. First of all, we're created to live well, right? But the fundamental reason that we all came back to this side of heaven, right? We came back in this physical state is to heal. But in order to heal, we got to do some healing work, which requires you to be vulnerability so that you can create space for your self-healing elements, which already live in you, which already stem from your womb, because your womb is your spiritual center. Everything that you need lives in your womb. You have everything you need. You lack nothing. You create your reality because you have all the tools within your spiritual womb. And sometimes we just don't use our tools correctly, right? So what's so wrong with being a strong Black woman? When we don't operate in the fullness of vulnerability, we don't have creation, right? And sometimes we cannot operate in the fullness of vulnerability because sometimes we feel unworthy. This is what I learned in therapy when we was talking about intergenerational trauma, because I was like, how am I going to show this information to my community? It needs to be able to relate to me. And my therapist was like, it does. So we got on the whiteboard, and this is how I do my work. This is how I understand the complexities of the trauma that I embody, right? But I'm trying to heal. So we got on the board and we did some work, and we talked about intergenerational trauma. And I took a picture of it. And on the board, it says that what's so wrong with being a strong Black woman? It hinders our ability to create. And how is that? It hinders our ability to create. And my therapist like, this relates to you. Think about your mother, right? So it was a lot of things that I couldn't create in my life or become in my life because of intergenerational trauma. So my mama was treated like shit by her mother. And I love my grandmother. She was my confidant, but a spade is a spade. My grandmother was my mother's oppressor, right? My mother was emotionally, mentally, and physically abused, right? So the abuse that she received from her mother gave her a sense of unworthiness, right? And when we're unworthy, when we feel like we're unworthy, we emotionally suppress, right? We emotionally suppress a lot when we feel unworthy, right? Because that's what we think that we can, because that's all we think that we have, right? When we feel unworthy, we don't think that we have a lot. We don't see that we have a lot. We don't recognize that we have a lot. Am I making sense, Ms. Libby? When we feel unworthy, we miss a lot of things that we do have. A lot of the divine things that we do have. And all we tend to focus on is what happened to us. And if we don't have healing tools to heal what happened to us, right? We begin to think what happened to us is our fault. We begin to think what happened to us is what we deserve, right? And what happened to us, if we are emotionally suppressed, if we think that this is what we deserve, and if we believe that this is what God has for me, we don't tell anybody. We just take it, suck it up, and deal with it. And the unworthiness expands, right? It doesn't go away. It just deepens. Oftentimes, being a strong Black woman doesn't allow us to operate in the fullness of vulnerability, which hinders our ability and space to create. And when we don't have space to create, we can feel unworthy. Like, do I deserve space to create? Do I deserve the right to be honest with myself? Right? And sometimes it's not even a negative, Miss Libby. It's just that we don't even perceive what happened to us as negative. We just see it like this is what happened and this is my norm, right? We don't know that it's bad or negative. We just know this is what happened to me and I didn't talk about it. Nobody wanted to listen to me, so I emotionally suppress it. And as we emotionally suppress, that energy seeks into our energetic body, our chakras, right? That's your first body. Your energetic body is your first body. And when we emotionally suppress, The energy of emotional suppression affects our energetic system, which I also think plays a part in how we feel so unworthy. Right? If we have more space to create from our authenticity, who we are outside of the mask, I think that we would feel more worthy if we knew that we had the right to release and express ourselves, to say, this is fucked up, to say that I hate him or I hate her, to say that this isn't fair, to not, it's not complaining, but it is expressing what happened to us. If we had more space for that, I think that a sense of worthiness will be more prevalent in our lives. On September 24th, I'm hosting a mini lecture, What's So Wrong with Being a Strong Black Woman. Tickets are $5. And we're going to go over the aspects. Let me bring it up right now. We're going to go over 3 aspects. Oh, shoot, I deleted it. We're going to go over 3 aspects. How to be honest when I need to breathe. How to be honest when something is too much. How to get into a cycle of freedom to bring myself pleasure in all its forms. Tickets are $5. If you know anybody that is interested in this event, please send them my way and click the link in my bio to register. And I think this is an imperative lecture that needs to happen for Black women so that we can understand the complexities that we are dealing with, so that we can live outside of the mask of the strong Black woman, so we can see our authentic self, meaning the woman up under the mask. When we are educated about the socializations, meaning the persona of the strong Black woman, that is a socialization, a way that we will conform to abide in. When we understand that, when we're educated on these complexities, it creates space for us to implement healing practices that are specific to what happened to us. So, the historical analysis, right, of being a strong Black woman is that it hasn't given us much space to be vulnerable. And when we lack the fullness of vulnerability, it's hard for us to create. And when we can't create, dimensions of unworthiness persist in our lives. So that's my study for the day. I hope you all enjoy. Please share this with someone that is in need. Peace and love. Cody.